go. Okay, welcome back to Meet the Authors. We have Dale Lehman with us again. He's going to tell us about his latest collection of short stories. And right now it's myself, Chuck, Andrew Sweet, I go by Chuck, and Justin Wagner. Hey, Justin.
Hello.
I just noticed your shirt.
Hello, everyone. Don't. It's just got a T-Rex printed like on the inside. So like I'd have to go like this, and you don't want to see that.
So what a clever shirt. So moving right along. So we're going to start with the warm up. Have a bit of a conversation, I guess. Have you read anything interesting lately?
I'm reading Billy Summers. It's Stephen King's latest book, but it's a crime thriller. It's not a horror book. There's no supernatural elements or anything in it. It's pretty good so far. It's kind of like more like old school kind of not quite as hardboiled detective as what we read last time.
Oh, Altered Carbon.
Altered Carbon, yeah, not quite like that, but it's kind of like it's in the mafia underworld and they hire an assassin. It's pretty cool. Interesting to see him stray from any kind of supernatural stuff.
That's interesting. Yeah, he's such a talented writer. I love reading his work. Just the way he weaves stories together, it just makes me jealous, really, honestly. It's good.
He's so prolific is what I'm like. How do you write so many books so fast? It's like, what? Whatever.
Yeah, I'm working my way through the Lunar Chronicles. I actually wrote a blog post about it a little bit about a couple of weeks ago. And I'm on Winter now, which is there's an evil queen I'm reading it with my daughter. So
okay,
there's an evil queen that's taken over that rules the moon, and she's trying to overthrow Earth. And she's got right now where we're at in the story, she's got Earth at her mercy, pretty basically. And then the main character is based on Cinderella and is trying to overthrow the queen. So it's an interesting. It's very, very creative. Marissa Myers is the author, and she weaves together story. Every book that she does is like a different fairy tale, and then she ties them all together. It's based on a different fairy tale. So first one is Cinder, based on Cinderella loosely. The next one is Scarlet, based on Little Red Riding Hood, and then it progresses through. Okay. So, and then she ties these all into a coherent plot. And I'm on book 4, and I guess there are 10 of them, which I hope that this ends at least one part of the story.
Yeah.
So, but they're pretty good. They're pretty good. What about you, Dale? Have you been into anything lately?
Reading John Le Carre.
What? You froze up, Chuck.
Say that again.
Sorry, Dale. Go ahead.
Oh. Okay.
No, you had frozen up, Chuck. So Dale, go ahead.
Yeah, you were going like that.
Right.
No, I've been working my way through John Le Carre's novels recently. It's kind of an interesting story. Way back when, because of being somebody who watched public television in Chicago way back then, they did a lot of British mysteries and other things and series that were made on British novels, which probably came out of the BBC, I assume. But I've seen at least parts of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy way back when. And I always wanted to read it, and just somehow never got around to it. So a couple of years ago, I started at the beginning with A Murder of Quality and Spy Who Came In From the Cold, which was the one that was his breakthrough novel, and began reading my way through those. My wife picked up one of his books at the local Barnes & Noble that had been signed. So I have a signed Le Carre.
Nice.
The unfortunate thing is he passed away shortly after I started reading his novels. But I think the one that I got was, I can't remember if it was the signed one or not, but it was his last novel I did read. And I mean, how old was he when he passed away? He was up there. And the last thing he wrote, it was just this absolutely brilliant novel. And so it's been kind of interesting to start at the beginning and work through and see how his career developed, how his writing developed. It's some of his, particularly his earlier novels, would be difficult I think, for a lot of modern readers, particularly American readers, because he takes his time. about developing the characters and developing the situations, and then you get to the end, and within the last few chapters, just everything explodes. But that's not what we're used to these days. We're used to having things explode at the beginning and keep exploding right through the end. But he is really an amazingly good writer. So I'm working now on the novel that followed Tinker Tailor, which is called, I had it a moment ago in my head. The Honorable Schoolboy is the title. It's a big novel. It was probably the biggest one he wrote, at least up to that point. And I have had so many interruptions and distractions. I'm just, every time I sit down to read it, it's just like, I really don't want to stop reading it, but I can't read it for that long at any one time. And so I'm getting to the point where I'm halfway into it and I'm like, what happened at the beginning?
Yeah.
But I'll get through it eventually. I do highly recommend his works to anybody who's interested in that genre.
If you like John le Carre, you might also like Len Dayton. My dad was a great fan of his stuff. So yeah. So I'm kind of in a strange position in that I've been editing my next book, and I've come to a break in that, and I find it's useful to have a little bit of distance from that for a little while. And so I'm currently editing some other people's work. So I've got a story about a guy in hospital called Ward 27B, which one of my learners has written. And he had this problem, and he wasn't sure where to put 3 side chapters in, but I think I've slotted them in quite neatly. And also I've got a story from a lady called Pat Spencer, who is an American writer who I met on Goodreads, and I'm reading and writing some feedback for her. And I've got another book to read, and I can't think for the moment what it is, but I've got a lot of reading in at the moment. But yeah, good, And the last published novel that I read was Gareth Powell's Silver Sands, which was the first thing that he did. Science fiction, of course, but it's basically a chap who has this massive adventure on a planet and realizes loads of stuff, and at the end it all makes sense. It's another of those slow burn ones, but yeah, it's really well written.
That's great. I think it's amazing that you have time to read up, to help out with other people. I'm editing my Libera, which is my 3rd one in my trilogy right now. And with that, I don't feel like I have the time, but I see that you're doing a lot of stuff. Well,
I have actually been in the position that there wasn't much else I could do but work on the novel that I've been working on.
Because of your leg?
Yeah, exactly. Because I was working on, my friend Colin who helps me run Fiction Fix, he fixed up a link for me so that I could access my files from this laptop, on this laptop, from the files that are actually upstairs on the main computer. And if he hadn't done that, I wouldn't have been able to do the editing. But I've got a bit of a problem at the moment because I had an artist and she's had to drop out. So I haven't got a cover at the moment.
Oh,
know exactly what I want, but it needs to be a painted cover. I can't have a pre-made or anything like that because there is nothing that would be,
it doesn't line up well. That's
suitable. Yeah, right. I know, that's right. I mean, if you've got an alien species and you want to show a particular scene, which I'm very fond of showing a particular scene,
right?
Because I think if you've got a good scene in the book, it's useful to be able to, hey, this is a scene in the book, and I think you will enjoy reading it, But it's a problem, and I haven't managed to solve it yet. All the artists I know are all incredibly busy. So I don't know quite where I'm going to go from here.
I could draw you a picture. right?
Like a
Yeah,
stick.
I've actually got the original sketches, but
I'll trace my hand and draw you a turkey, and that'll be your cover.
well, at the moment, without a cover, it's going to be a turkey. So,
So Dale, tell us about. Let's switch gears a little bit and let's take some time. And I'm interested in your new project. You want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, well, I brought a copy of every one of my books this time. I actually have them now. Before, when I did this last month, I was missing some books. But my latest book just released. And here's the cover. It's called The Realm of Tiny Giants.
Ooh,
On my screen, the words are backwards. Probably are yours too. But
they look good. It's reading the right way.
This is a small collection of short stories. I have been writing short stories a very long time. I started when I was a child, actually. And it was really only once I was married and had some kids and so on that I got to the point where I actually was writing novels. And then I went through a hiatus, which I can tell the story of if you want, but it's kind of long, of about 10 years where I actually didn't write fiction at all. And when I started up again, I began with a novel, which was my first published novel, The Fibonacci Murders, which I have that cover here too. The same guy did all these covers, by the way. So he is a digital artist. He's in Siberia, I found out. So he doesn't charge very much, but he's a very good artist. Anyway, I started writing these novels, and at a certain point, I was introduced to a website called medium.com, and you may have heard of it or you may not have. Medium is kind of like a journalistic place, but they have writers who write on anything that they want, and they get posted out there, and they do not, their model is they do not have advertising. They do everything on a subscription basis. So, and they have done fairly well for themselves. They keep evolving it, and things are changing. But when I started writing out there, I started writing some short stories, and I posted a number of them online. I just kind of kept going, and I've been doing things with flash fiction contests and sometimes just longer things that occurred to me, and I would put them out there. And at some point I realized, hey, I've got enough short stories out here to make a collection. So that's what my wife and I worked on. We pulled together 31 stories. I actually had more than that in there, and she rejected some of them. That's what a good editor does, right?
Yeah.
So we ended up with 31. And the funny thing was, I got a couple of book bloggers to review it for me, and they really liked it. I got 5-star reviews out of them. And I also did some guest posts for them. And one of them, I was just writing this thing, and I started out about flavors of ice cream, because this is a book that has multiple genres represented in the short stories. So I just started with the different flavors of ice cream. What's your favorite flavor? Well, you might like this, but you probably also eat that and that and that. So as a way of saying, hey, a book that brings together a bunch of genres is a good thing. And I got to the end of it, and I wrote, and there's 31 stories here, and I just thought, wait a minute, that's the same number of flavors of ice cream the Baskin Robbins advertises.
I was just thinking that.
Totally consequence. I did not plan that at all. But anyway, the book was released mid-August, and I ran a couple of promotions for it. And according to Ingram, I have sold 41 copies of the print book in the last, well, since it was released. So I think that makes it a pretty good release for somebody who nobody knows.
Well, for a book of short stories, I understand those are more difficult to market than the novels.
Yeah,
I just found you on Medium, and I'm looking at your first article here. It says how I eliminated scores of free time and made $12.37 a month.
Yes. Right.
That's hilarious.
That's that was one of the first humor pieces that I did out there. For a publication called Slackjaw, and I've become disillusioned with them because they don't like me very much. Actually, They liked that one, and they liked one or two other ones that I think one other one of mine they published, and the rest of them they rejected. So I'm just like, I don't know if I want to waste my time on you.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
Well, they're a hard market to crack, though, because they're a large publication. They have professional writers who do it full time, writing for them. So
Yeah.
it's not easy to get in them. One other place that I appeared, and I think, Chuck, you mentioned this in one of your promos somewhere along the line, is this book, Writers in Lockdown. This is a collection of short stories that was written by a bunch of authors who volunteered to write stories for the editor. F. Jones. I know that it's a female editor. I don't know what the F stands for. It might be Faith or something like that. But she is British, and she, on Goodreads, I think it was, she put some posts out soliciting stories for the collection. So this happened early on during the lockdown last year, 2020, and I was working from home, like so many other people. So I put together a story for her. And it turns out that I think my story was probably the longest in the collection. If not, it's the second longest. And I was concerned because she had a word limit and I was over it. And I didn't know how to pare my story down. I did as best as I could, but I just couldn't get it down to her word limit. And she said, you know what? It doesn't matter. So it's a good story. It doesn't matter. So she published that. The interesting thing about that story, it's a science fiction tale involving a young boy whose planet is attacked by pirates, and he is taken aboard the pirate ship. His parents are actually killed in the attack, and he is taken aboard the pirate ship, and he basically is adopted by the captain, who is a woman, who is one of the most feared pirates in space. And the genesis of this story was actually from way back in the 1990s, when I actually wrote the story in which this character, as a grown man, is a captain of a ship in, we'll call them the space police for lack of a better term. And he encounters the pirate ship captained by this woman. And the upshot of this is they're involved in an incident that he cannot allow her to continue, and he must destroy her ship, which means killing her, of course. But she is his adoptive mother.
Oh, man.
So I never published that story. I still have it sitting around. It probably needs quite a bit of editing because I wasn't that great of a writer back then. But I had always wanted, after I wrote that story, I liked the idea of these characters and I wanted to write a novel. So I started a novel, but I never got past like chapter 2 of it. It just wouldn't go anywhere. But I realized, as in thinking about what was I going to write for the Writers in the Lockdown collection, that I've had this thing sitting around for a long time, stewing in the back of my head, and I'll bet I could do another short story that is how these two came together in the first place. So that was the story there, and it's just called Adoption.
How neat! What a neat idea.
Yeah, and I do want to do more stories about them and either bring them together as a collection or do the novel and fit the short stories into it as well. But
and that one's, you said that you haven't published that one or anything.
The original story I did not. This one, Adoption, is in this collection. Right?
Oh, right, yeah.
And actually,
but the big
novel. The editor, the novel.
Okay.
It's like 2 chapters. As far as I've gotten in 20 years, and it'll probably be another 20 years before I figure it out. However, one of the interesting things is the author or the editor of that collection got some people together and did audio versions of all those stories. So you can go out and find Writers in Lockdown on YouTube, and all the stories are out there. Now, they are not professionally read, so they will not compare well to a professionally done audiobook. But it's interesting to see your characters come to life. It's especially interesting to me to see how my characters come to life in the mouths of a bunch of British readers who don't really know what I had in my head.
Right.
The characters, I cannot say I think of any of these characters the way they read them, but it's very interesting the way they read them. So if you have time to go out and look for that, and you might have some fun with that.
That's a
The
really
other
good.
thing,
Oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that's a really good insight for like audiobooks, like because as you're writing, you have your characters' voices in your head, right? And then if you hear somebody else read it and you're like, that's not what that guy sounds like, you know, it's like.
Right. On the subject of audiobooks, though, this was my last published novel. This came out in February, I think it was. And I probably talked about it the last time we were on. I have had an audiobook done of this one, professionally done audiobook. And that one is available out there too. So it's on Audible and Amazon, which owns Audible. So you can find it in both those places. So this has been my summer. I've been doing the audiobooks. I've been getting Realm of Tiny Giants published. And then my my 3 novels for my Howard County Mysteries.
Yeah.
You can't see all those, but I've completed the first draft of the 4th one of those. And as Helen said, I've set it aside for a while. And I'll probably come back to that in a month and start the revisions. So that will, I hope, come out sometime next spring or summer. And then I have another novel that I am working on, which is totally unrelated to anything else. It's dystopian science fiction, post-apocalyptic, post-pandemic.
So you ventured into nonfiction then?
Well, now you could look at it that way. This is another project that I started probably 20 years ago. And I wrote a short story. It was called Penitence. Illinois? Yeah, okay. So it was probably 25 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, something like that.
Is your editor keeping you straight?
It's called Penitence. And it was a short story. And the idea was there's these 2 guys who are survivors of some kind of pandemic that has wiped out most of humanity. The agent involved in this pandemic was not natural. It was manufactured as a weapon. And what it does is it induces chemical changes in the brain that simulates various kinds of mental illness. So basically what you've got a bunch of people who contract this thing, and it turns out to be extremely virulent. So it just tears through the population. Everybody is literally going mad, killing themselves, killing each other, whatever, you know, and very few people survive it. So you've got these 2 people who have fled out to the Western mountains to try to get away from it. And they find another person who has fled out to the Western mountains to try to get away from it, who is infected, but in a very peculiar way. His symptoms come and go and they change. So it's like, today he'll have this mental illness, tomorrow he'll have that one, and all kinds of different things. And it turns out he was one of the scientists who was actively involved in manufacturing the things to begin with.
Spoiler alert.
Right. So spoiler alert, but that was the short story. And the short story was basically he took it upon himself to save these 2 and teach them what they needed to know to survive it before he dies. Okay. Thus the name Penitence, because that, you know, him
right,
trying to make amends for what he's done. In the novel, I mean, that's a very simple story. The novel has to be a lot more complicated, right? So and I have for a long time wanted to novelize this thing as well. It's just taken me a long time to figure out how to do it. I won't give you any spoilers on this. Some of those elements that I mentioned are there, but the 2 characters who are the primary characters that you will follow through the novel, it starts in New York, where the plague first erupts, and they get out of New York, but they're going to have a lot of encounters along the way. And I'm going to need some help with this somewhere along the line. I decided, because I wanted to, and this kind of pulls things out of what's going on in the world today. I made one guy is a investment manager in an investment company, finance, very worldly. He's an atheist.
Wide boy.
White.
Mm.
That's important. The other guy is he's an older guy too. The other guy is a black guy, works on a loading dock. His brother was killed some time ago in gang violence. He's got a girlfriend who he's going to marry, but hasn't married yet. And the two of them just get thrust together by complete accident in the chaos that erupts when this thing breaks out. And so part of the problem that I'm having is I'm kind of have this racial tension in there, which I have very little experience with because of my upbringing. So I'm probably going to need to find some readers to tell me to slap me around a bit, and tell me, no, you can't do that, or that reads bad, or this is how it goes. So
Yeah.
But that is kind of one of the major subplots, is just the two of them and their relationship and how it evolves as they are forced together and have to survive together. And you can kind of tell that some of it as well. The guy who's a manager, he's used to being a manager, so he's going to manage the situation.
Right.
And the black kid interprets this as, oh, yeah, you're the white guy, you know everything, right? Which he actively resists, but maybe that's part of it too.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
Because he also is interpreting, okay, this is this young black kid, he's on a loading dock. You're going to be stuck on that loading dock your whole life. You don't know anything at all. And when they get talking, he finds out that the kid is an amateur astronomer, has a telescope, things like, and was going to take some classes in computers. He was kind of like a black version of me. I was an amateur astronomer, wanted to be an astronomer, and ended up in computers.
I just bought a Celestron S127 SLT, I think is what it is. So astronomy, if you still have a telescope.
Yeah, I have a Celestron, a 6-inch Newtonian that's I still use it. I've used it for many years by now, and time being what it is, sometimes I don't get out very often with it anymore, but I still do.
Yeah.
Subscribe to Sky Telescope. That's how I keep up on my astronomy for any science fiction that I do.
Yeah, you kind of have to. Yeah, I'm just curious, why New York? What as a setting?
High population center. Open question as to whether the release was accidental or a terrorist attack.
Oh, okay.
Nobody knows. The people who do know are probably all dead.
Oh, I'm definitely going to be looking for that when it comes out. That sounds really pretty engaging.
I'm hoping to have that done. Well, this is a big if, but I'm hoping that I can have that done for release sometime next year, and it would probably be late next year if I do. We've been, my wife and I ran a publishing company for 9-10 years. And we were mostly publishing other people's books, and they were nonfiction books related to the Baha'i faith primarily, which is my religion. And she was doing the editing and the setup and so forth and so on. Well, she's had a constellation of health problems that erupted a few years ago. And it was, she is doing well, I should say that first, but she's on a number of medications to ensure she does well. And there are days when it just is kind of too much for her. So we decided when all this was happening that there was no way that we could run a 2-person publishing company when she was the one that did all the work. I mean, I did the business work and the setting up the books online and then all the advertising and stuff like that. But she made the books. She edited them. She set them up. So, I'm sorry. Oh, I must give our daughter Jocelyn credit because she did help with that too. Yeah, she helped with this.
Good job, Jocelyn.
Yeah.
Right.
She's not here. She can't hear you. But yeah, it just became too much. So we terminated all of our publications of those books, set the authors free to make their own way in the world.
Open their
And,
cages, go on,
right.
live your
Yeah.
life.
But we kept the company and created a new imprint, Red Tails, for my books. So she still does the editing and the setup for my books. So I try not to ask her to do more than she is capable of doing. And even then, sometimes I say, can you do this, in the next 2-3 months? And she's, oh yeah, sure. And it'll be 6 months before it's done. Partly because of her health and partly because just life just gets in the way.
Life, yeah, for sure.
Life is a problem.
So I was really happy that this year I published 2 books and got an audiobook out and finished the first draft of 1 novel and got a good start on the next one. Yeah, I've done a lot this year, I feel.
Yeah, wow,
somebody
that's
who's only doing
amazing.
it part-time. Now if I could just sell some.
Well, I got to tell you, I keep looking over. You see me looking to my right here. I'm checking out your website. It's phenomenal.
Oh, thank you.
I don't know who, like, if you did it or you had the
I
design.
did it.
Yeah,
I did it. I'm a
great.
professional software developer and I have
Oh, well, there you go.
experience in web design. However, I will tell you how I did it. And this can be, if you've got reasonable web skills, it's easy to do this.
Yeah.
It's a WordPress site with it. The theme is called Hestia. Hestia, I actually didn't know about it myself until I was a couple of years ago looking to redo the website, and I did some research on it. But it's gives you a very professional looking site.
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
It's not hard to use. There's a few tricks that you have to pick up on, but if you're comfortable doing basic things with websites, you can set up a WordPress website with this theme and make it look pretty good without too much trouble.
Good. Well, so we're at about halfway, so we're ready to open it up and have more conversation. Just for everyone that's participating, I want to throw out a question for, I guess, everybody here. Audiobooks. I guess we can start with, well, Dale, you were talking about audiobooks, so why did you decide to? Because I assume you recorded it yourself.
No.
Okay.
I didn't. I am not a voice talent. I would recommend that if you're going to do an audio book, you not do it yourself unless you are a somewhat trained voice talent and have the correct equipment to do it. It's not. I mean, I've heard, like I said, the Writers in Lockdown, they did that with just some people they got together and recorded it, and they did a nice job, but you can tell it's not professional. So if you're going to sell it, they're giving it away. If that's fine if you're going to give it away. If you want to sell it, you really need to have it done professionally. That means money. The reason I did it was I'm a member of the Maryland Writers Association. They have chapters all around the state, and each chapter has meetings on a monthly basis. The chapter president in my area did a presentation on audiobooks, and she has done a number of audiobooks and gets reasonable sales off of them. One of the things that we learned in her presentation is that audiobooks are actually the fastest growing segment of the book market. Ebooks are not it anymore. They've flattened out. Everybody used to think, ebooks are going to wipe out print books. Well, some of us knew that was never going to happen, but it apparently, at least at this time, it doesn't look like it's actually going to come even close. A lot of people do read electronically, and it's definitely worth having ebooks, but the new thing that people are really jumping on the bandwagon on is audiobooks. And I've actually talked to people that I work with. Guy who was actually my team lead, the job I had when I was during the pandemic, he said one day when I was talking about my books, he's like, I don't read books. I listen to audiobooks. If you come out with an audiobook, let me know and I'll get it.
I can second that.
I'm not gonna buy your book because I don't read books.
Yeah, I'm completely different. Not completely different, but the audiobook is awesome. I listen to it when I drive and while I'm working. I'm a software developer too. And then I'm also reading a print book and I'm also reading a book on my phone. So I do all that at the same time.
Hopefully you're not doing all that while you're driving.
No,
That's a trick.
no,
Listening while you're driving.
just the print book is the one that I do while I'm driving. Right.
If I can find an
Um,
audiobook, then that's my go-to. I do, a lot of writers still don't publish audiobooks, so I'll dabble in the written one, but audiobooks will help a lot. Helen, were you going to say something? Oh, sorry, Dale.
Oh, go ahead.
Mm.
I guess not. Okay.
Did I just put you on?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Dale.
Well, yeah, go ahead, Helen.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, I'm kind of interested in doing an audio book. Obviously, you know that I'd run Fiction Fix, and because you're going to be a guest on it, which is great. And Chuck already has been, and I'm hoping that Justin will at some point.
I want to. I keep forgetting about it.
Oh, well, I'll invite you.
Put them on the schedule.
Right. I need a schedule. My life is so chaotic. If I don't have a schedule, I forget everything.
I'll invite you, but it'll be in the new year because I'm full up till Christmas now.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll have something written by then.
So basically, yes, I do want to get into audiobooks, and I've got actually an audiobook or a book that I think would really be fantastic done as an audiobook, but I don't want anybody else to read it because I think it's my book. I'm good at reading all things like that.
Well, you have quite a charming voice.
Sorry?
You have quite a charming voice, so.
Have I? Oh,
Yeah.
that's nice. I think the thing is that one of the things that I try to do, and Chuck will probably bear me out about this, is I try to actually act out what I'm reading, because I do lots of open mic nights and things like that. Well, I did up until the pandemic struck. So I would go into different pubs and things and get up and read a bit of my fiction, you know, which was a bit of a weird thing to do, but actually really good, you know, and it got me known, and Fiction Fix got me known and everything. But yeah, no, I'm really interested, but I don't think that it should be necessarily. I've been looking into how I might do it without going through ACX, because that means you've got to go through Amazon, and I'm, you know, I have reservations with that.
Well, yeah, I was never a big fan of Amazon because of my experience with them and when we were publishing our books.
Yeah.
But they're great for customers. They're not always so great for their suppliers.
For the creators, yeah.
But they're also kind of, in the world we live in, kind of a necessary evil because they're the 800-pound gorilla in the room.
There are other companies about.
There are other companies, yeah. There are other companies. One thing I'll say about just briefly about my experience in doing this is I don't know if this is going to be worth it financially. This is my first foray into it, and I'm not very good at marketing. I'm still learning about marketing, so probably I will waste a lot of money here. But when you work with ACX, the way they work is they have two models. They have a royalty share model, and they have a pay the guy up front model, whatever they call that.
Right.
And they have a hybrid.
Right.
You can pay them something up front and you can share royalties.
Right.
What's going to happen is if you can pay them up front, they love that because they get their money and they don't have to worry about where their money's coming from. So they can cover their production costs, make their profit.
Yeah.
And that's great, but that will be expensive.
Yeah.
If you do a pure royalty share, that's great for you because you need no money up front. But the guy or girl who's reading it is going to have nothing to cover their production costs. It's 100% risk for them, and they don't know if they're going to make anything back on royalties from your book. So the people you get who are willing to do that are new. They're the people who are looking for the experience and to start making a name for themselves and aren't so concerned about the money yet.
I've considered going into like reading like as audiobooks. I've thought about it.
If you can do the hybrid, though, that's kind of the best of both worlds because you do pay some money up front, but you don't have to pay quite as much up front. So they're happy because they at least get their production costs covered. and you will get a
Yeah.
better quality of reader for that.
Yeah.
In my case, the contract for what you pay them up front is based on per finished hour. So however long your recording is. The contract I agreed to with the guy I selected was $100 per finished hour. It was about 8 hours to read the book.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
I got out my credit card and I paid him $800. Once the project was finished to my satisfaction, then I paid him. And then the book went on sale. I haven't looked recently, but I think in the first couple of days, we sold about 15 copies. Probably most of them were people that he knew that wanted to get the book that he had read, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's still good because it's still expanding your audience.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. Now, if you go out to Amazon or Audible and look up Weasel Words, there will be a clip that you can play as a preview. And it's from somewhere in the middle of the book, I think is where I picked it up. And you can kind of hear how he reads it and what he does. A good reader not only has a good dramatic voice for the kind of work that you've got, but also is capable of doing different character voices to distinguish the characters.
Mm.
That's something that I personally would never be able to do because I think I can be pretty good at dramatic reading, but I'm not real good at voices. Anything I say is going to sound a lot like me. And I've got, you know, Weasel Words has a lot of characters in it. He came up with voices for every single one of them, and they aren't all entirely distinguishable if you stack them all up, you know, but they are mostly distinguishable.
Yeah.
So I was really happy with the job that he did, and he, like in the Story and Writers in Lockdown, he surprised me a few times with the way he interpreted things and the voices that he gave them. But some of them just made Weasel Words is supposed to be a funny book.
Yeah.
And it is funnier when you hear him read it.
Right. Oh, well, that sounds like a really good read.
Yeah, so that did good. Yeah, that worked out good.
Matchup.
Yeah.
I've not
I've
really
got it
had a lot
pulled
of
up.
experience of listening to books, but obviously I've got my new car now, so I might be able to listen to things in the car.
Right.
There you go.
So those are the things, if you're thinking about doing an audiobook, you know, the things to think about are, one, getting somebody who's good at dramatic reading, who can do voices, and who will not charge you more than you can actually afford, knowing that probably initially you're not going to make that money back because you know how hard it is to sell.
A lot of these things are slow burners.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
You know, what's interesting is I've never really paid attention to narrators until I listened to Harry Potter, and I did the entire series on audiobook, and it's narrated by Jim Dale in the US. I understand it's narrated by Stephen Fry in England or Britain. But Jim Dale does an amazing job at capturing the voices of the male and female characters, including like Professor McGonagall, which has always been like, I'll try her out every once in a while, but that's hard for me. I don't know. But he does a fantastic job. But you know, I don't think anybody in this room is probably going to go out and hire Jim Dale. I mean, he's pretty expensive, but
yeah.
Jim Dale, the actor.
I'm only familiar with him with through the audiobook narration. I don't know, maybe.
There was a British actor called Jim Dale who was in some of the Carry On films, but I don't know if that's the same guy. There must be a few Jim Dales around, I should think.
Probably.
Mm.
So, you know, did you get a chance to listen to your book and be like, I don't like this part, can you re-record it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, I got sick of listening to the book, because what happened was, well, the first thing is you audition. So you put the project out there and you take auditions. And so you got to listen to everybody who's auditioning. And you give them like 2 to 3 pages. So it's not a lot.
Yeah.
But, you know, wading through all those at a certain point, it's like, they're all starting to sound the same. How do I pick?
Yeah.
Fortunately, the guy, his name is Jono Island, and he had a very distinctive voice. Then when we started the project, he recorded the whole book. Well, no, he recorded, there's a checkpoint. He recorded 15 minutes of the book. And then I listen to that 15 minutes to make sure, make sure we're on track. Is he delivering things the way I think he should? Is he kept getting the characters right? Things like that. And so you can make some corrections to it before you get too far into it. And then after that checkpoint, he records the whole book. And then I listen to it. I go through it with the book in one hand and the earphones in and a pen to make notes.
Yeah.
Or something like that. And okay, here's all the places where something went wrong. And then he would go back and correct them. And then I'd listen to it again. Okay, here's all the places where there's still something wrong. I think we did that 3 times.
But you get that
they actually
same
only
thing.
have to, yeah,
Sorry.
they actually only have to do it twice contractually. He was nice enough to, I tried to make sure we got everything the first 2 times so there wasn't anything left, but he was nice and said, look, if there's anything else, I'll fix it for you. And I think most people would do that.
Yeah, especially if you're like trying to get exposure and everything.
Yeah.
It'd be
what you don't want to get into though is here's the 100th repetition, because then you're really asking them to put in way more time than they're getting paid for.
Yeah.
Pull the old Stanley Kubrick on them.
Right.
Let's do this 127 times.
But what was funny was I don't know if it was the first or second go around when I gave him corrections, he says, I know that we actors tend to change words sometimes when we're acting, but I didn't realize I did it to that extent. It was just
Maybe
funny
because it's
there were
easier to say or something.
I mean, he'd be reading something and it'd just be a different word than what I had. Not wrong, but just a different word, or a word that he left out that I had in just to emphasize something. There were a couple of cases where I listened to it and I thought, it makes no difference, so I'm not going to ask him to change it. But there was one that what was really funny is I found I had typos in that book, a lot more typos in that book than I realized by listening to it and reading it along with, it was horrible. But he corrected a lot of them.
Experience.
Yeah. And I mentioned that to him. I was like, look, I mean, I don't blame you. I mean, I'm finding all these typos in the text. But he corrected a lot of the typos, but there was one that he didn't correct. And this is the funniest typo I've seen in any of my works in a long time. Melody, who is the female lead in the story, is going to her closet to find some appropriate clothing for whatever event they're going to. And Bernard, her husband, is out in the other room, and he hears the hangers scraping across the rod in the closet. And I don't know how this got in there. It was hyphenated and broken across lines, and it said hanger shangers. So it was like hangers and hangers together, but it got hyphenated, so it looks like hanger shangers.
Neat.
And he read it that way.
Well,
and I'm like, you corrected all these other typos. Why did you read it that? Well, maybe he thought I was being funny somehow, and he just didn't get the joke. I don't know.
That's funny.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, so you got to double down on that one. I meant to do it.
So guys, I got to cut out about a little early, about 10
Yep.
minutes. My daughter has a thing at the park for her Civil Air Patrol.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, so
You
I
should
got to
tell
go
them to
into
schedule their things around these.
I know, right? The crazy government, military, paramilitary stuff. We're like, I've got a podcast. They're like, oh, sorry, sir. We'll schedule everything. Well, it's lovely to see you all again, and I'll see you next month. Chuck, good luck. I'll probably speak to you in between.
Sure.
Wonderful to talk to you, Ellen and Dale again.
Yeah, good to see you again.
Yeah, you guys have a great month, and I'll see you next time.
All
All right.
Take care.
See you, Jeff.
Take care.
So I've got a question. Formatting ebooks. So I'm listening. This is a slight change. So I have been looking at ebooks, even though I don't necessarily read them. I've been sampling them just to make sure that my ebooks are up to speed. And I noticed that some authors, the title separators on each page will use like different fonts and little graphics, and then the titles will be like more elaborate or something. Do you do that? Do either of you do that with your ebooks or
Not really. No, I think you can come a bit unstuck with that. But what I did in my I've got a little collection of 3 stories. One of them's like a novelette, time travel novelette, and then there's 2 short horror stories in it. So what I did with those, I put in the print version, I put a page with that kind of thing on for the start of each of the stories. But I haven't done anything in the ebooks. I've just kept it very straight and very, you know, Times New Roman.
Okay. For the print version, you changed it up a little bit, but not necessarily for the ebooks.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I did some quite fancy things with that, because, you know, you can get the fonts and then you can fiddle about with them in Word and make something that looks a little bit interesting. So I've got a witch babe going off in direction. It gets smaller and smaller as you go further away.
Now, do you find that adds to the, like, for you when you're reading, do you find that adds to your reading experience when you see little splashes like that in the print books that you read? The reason I'm asking these questions is because I'm debating doing this, so I'm trying to find out what's the effect and how much work. Go ahead.
I'll back up and say about ebooks.
Sure.
I would have to look again to be sure, but I think the titles for chapter titles, or I think we in our ebooks make them a larger font.
Oh yeah.
But not necessarily a different font. And the reason for that is that Barnes & Noble anyway is very picky about, you can only use fonts that can be distributed, or that you don't need, that you have the rights to distribute.
Yeah,
and
need a commercial license.
Yeah, and they do not like you having embedded fonts in the book, so you kind of have to go with standard fonts for the ebooks to make it work for them. And it's just easier to do it that way across the board. Originally, when I started out, I got really irritated by that because I wanted our ebooks to look nice like print books, and it's like, no, it's not going to work. However, when my wife, sometimes when there are sections with scenes within a chapter, at the scene break, sometimes she will put a little graphic in the print book. And what I've done those are generally like font glyphs or something like that in the print book, to get them to work in the ebook, because you can't embed the font that glyph is part of. We use Adobe InDesign, and there's a way in InDesign that I always have to look up to remember how to do it, but you change the glyph into an image. So it actually embeds that image in there. So in some of our
Kindle,
books,
you
there
can
will
put
be
equations and things like images.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
to save them as images.
Right. So there will be in some of our books, not all of them, but in some of them, if she's done that in the print book, I will carry that over to the ebook by converting those things to images.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we do fairly straightforward, simple formatting.
Yeah.
In the print books, what I would recommend doing, and my wife spent a lot of time doing this. She spends a lot of time in books anyway, because she just reads like that. But what we always try to do is, if we had a question about how something really should look, we would go pull some books off of our shelves by one of the big publishers and see how they did it. And we would kind of copy that. A lot of print books out there that are self-published look like garbage. They do not look at all professional. We always try to make sure that ours look professional. Even if they're full of typos, they at least look professional.
Professional looking typos.
Right. Yes, and actually, you cannot distinguish the professionality of a book by the number of typos, because I've seen some horrendous typos in books by the big publishers too. Absolutely. There was one I ran across where half a paragraph was missing. It's just the paragraph ended and it's like in the middle of a sentence.
Uh-oh.
Oops.
Yeah. I've actually done quite a few workshops in libraries, which is a brilliant place to do a live face-to-face workshop, because you can, if you're doing a self-publishing workshop, you can say to people, right, I want you to go and get 6 books from the shelf, and then you get them to look through and see how other publishers have actually tackled particular aspects of publishing. And so exactly your point, Dale, about you know, checking what other people have done and trying to, you know, use that as a an example, really.
Yeah.
That's good. I always forget about that. I mean, I've got tons of books overflowing. In the move, I've got several like boxes of books that I can't bear to part with, that have traveled with me. So those are a good resource.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've moved my workshops online, but obviously, you know, you hope that people have got books floating around at home that they can actually go and look at and see how it's done.
Sure. Okay.
We're going to see if we had anything
yeah, go ahead.
that I could put on the screen here. And a lot of our books, we do them relatively simple. We got a font, we have the header, whatever, and do it relatively simply. But occasionally we've done something different. As I recall, it was in the first one, Fibonacci murders. Is that how she did that? Yeah. So at a scene break, this is a book that's murder is based on a mathematical series. She put the summation symbol in there.
Oh, that's cool.
It just looks so neat, slipped in like that.
Yeah, it's just a little touch like that.
Yeah.
And then at the end, I didn't do this. She did this at the very end of it.
Oh, nice. Oh, I love it. All right. Well,
so you can put little touches. I wouldn't go overboard, but you can put little touches like that in books.
Cool.
That makes them kind of nice.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining, Dale. It's been great to have you this morning.
Been great being here.
Helen as well.
I tried to get more people to join. I keep sending out the announcements and everybody ignores me.
keep working at it.
Yeah, keep working at it.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, thank you for both. Appreciate the time that you put in and the good advice. I think a lot of the people that we do have some subscribers, and a lot of people that listen will value the advice, I think. So definitely much appreciated.
Well, thank you for having me. I always enjoy being here.
Yeah. Look forward to seeing you both again. And Dale, I look forward to seeing you on Fiction Fix.
Right. That's October, right?
Yes, I think it's October.
Oh, excellent.
No, we aren't having a meeting in September because Colin and I both need. I've actually realised who the other book is. It's Colin's book, and I'm probably going to publish him as well. But basically, we decided we needed a month off. So we said, well, what we do, we'll take September off and we'll be back in November and October and November. December, we're not going to do a Fiction Fix in future because although in the pub, it was great because what I did was take Christmas crackers along and hand them out to everybody that was up our end of the pub, and then have a little competition to see who could read the jokes in the crackers the best, and then they got a little prize, which was a fun thing to do, you know, just in the break. But we can't do that online. It's just not feasible. So we've decided to skip that one, and then we'll be back January, February, March.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
All right. Well, thank you. All right. Have a great Saturday, folks. Or Saturday.
You too.
Evening. Finish it off. All right. See you.
Thank you.
Cheers. Lovely to see you both. Bye.
Bye.